Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Popular Stranger, and we are back with another gameplay video for you. And as promised, we are starting today, and you can consider this episode number 0 of our Minnesota Vikings defensive playbook / ebook / guide / helping you guys out to win more games. So we're going to go ahead and jump on into, again, I just mentioned this is episode 0. What we're going to focus on this one is setting up quick adjustments, because you're going to need to learn this stuff. It's something that I would want all of you guys to know, whether you're going to run the playbook that I'm in or not, because there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to do certain things when it comes to quick adjustments, and ultimately this is going to be the way to set up your defense a lot faster than basically going from like player to player to player to player, because I see people do it all the time. When I'm on offense and I have identifier enabled or omniscient, that allows me to see who my opponent is using. By the way, very, very recommended ability that you guys have on your offensive side of the football, but I can usually tell, and it's kind of a tell, you know, number one, who your opponent is using. But like anytime I see somebody select their defensive tackle or a defensive end, and then they go back to their linebacker or safety, and they do that like every play, I can usually tell that they are trying to put, like, we'll just use Amari Barno as an example. They're putting him in like a QB spy like this, or they're selecting him to put him into a hard flat to put him in coverage. You can do this without actually selecting the player. In fact, you can manipulate a zone or a coverage or an assignment for every single person on your defense without ever having to leave the one position that you're using. So again, that's what I want to focus on in this episode, and you're going to use these tools of learning how to quick adjust when we go over all of the defensive setups from the various formations, mostly in dime 1-4. We'll talk about mid blitz and a couple other things, but you know, setting up adjustments on the fly very quick before your opponent snaps it is going to be vital to all of this, and you need to understand how to do quick adjustments, and that's what we're going to do right now. So there's basically 3 types or groups of players that you can quick adjust, and again, it's going to be every player on defense, but you basically got your defensive line, you got your linebackers, and then your entire secondary, which is going to be cornerbacks and safeties. So let's start from, I guess, the line of scrimmage and go up. If you ever want to quick adjust any of your defensive line members, and in this situation, we're in dime 1-4, so we have 3 defensive linemen. We have Amari Barno, we have our defensive tackle in Chris Jones, and then our other defensive end in Nolan Smith Jr. So again, I'm all the way up here selected on my safety, but if I wanted to change assignments on any of these 3 players, we're going to start that process by tapping our left deep directional pad. So the directional pad button to the left 2 different times. So that's not your analog stick, but the D-pad. And when you press it 2 different times, it's now going to bring up icons for the 3 defensive line members. Now, if you had a 4th one there, if you were in a nickel coverage and there were 4 D linemen, then you'd have a 4th option out there. But for this formation, just 3. So if I wanted to change Amari Barno, I would then hit square, and that's going to be X on Xbox. If I wanted to change Chris Jones, we'd hit triangle or Y on Xbox, and if we wanted to change Nolan Smith, we'd hit X on PlayStation or A on Xbox. Once we do that, and we'll just do Barno for example, we now have additional options here in the bottom left to where we can put him in man coverage, we can spy him, we can do a bluff blitz, we can do a regular blitz, which he's technically kind of already rushing the passer in a blitz there, and then we can put him into different pass coverages, so hard flat, curl flat, vertical hook, and seam flat. These are all things we can do to that one specific player without ever needing to select him. So again, if I wanted to drop him in coverage and put him in a hard flat to cover, you know, the left side of the field, maybe I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be going on some type of table route, we would then just simply press left on our left analog stick, and now if you look at the formation, he is in that hard flat without me ever having to select that player. If I quickly wanted to change my mind and put him back into pass coverage, the quickest way you can do it is just reset your entire defense if it comes to just resetting one mistake. So really quickly to do that, we're going to hit square on PlayStation or X on Xbox, and then L2 to reset play. That would be left trigger on Xbox, and now it is all exactly the same. So again, if I wanted to change his assignment, double tap the directional pad left 2 different times. We're going to hit square or whatever button is to select the player that you want to change, and this time around we're going to put him in a vertical hook, so we press down on our left analog stick, and now you can see he's going to be playing that vert hook in coverage. If I wanted to go back to having him rush the passer, double tap that D-pad left 2 different times, select the defender and Barno in this situation, and then we would press down on our right analog stick to basically put him back into a blitz, which is going to be rushing the passer. If I wanted to change Chris Jones, and I know I'm being very repetitive, but there's a lot of newbies in here that are learning this stuff for the first time, so I just want to cover everything. This time we're going to change Chris Jones, right? So double tap the left D-pad button, we're going to hit triangle on PlayStation, would be Y on Xbox to select him, and let's just say, for example, my opponent is running a lot with their quarterback, I want to put him into a QB spy, we're going to select right, or we're going to push left on our right analog stick. Sorry, it gets confusing sometimes. So right analog stick, push it to the left. You can see that's where it says QB spy. And now if we check our play art, that's exactly what Chris Jones is doing. And you can do this to more than one player. You just have to do it before your opponent snaps the ball, obviously. So again, if I wanted to go back to Barno and put him in a QB spy, I can do the same exact thing. And now we have 2 QB spies out there, with Nolan Smith being the only person rushing outside of our middle linebacker there, and Brian Urlacher, but that's how the play is designed, right? But we can change him as well. We'll get to the linebackers in a second. And then finally, just to show you another example of every single defensive lineman here, if we want to change Nolan Smith somehow, some way, double tap the D-pad to the left, select his icon. He's going to be X on PlayStation. That would be A on Xbox. And if I want to put him into man coverage, we'll get a little crazy here. I would push up on my right analog stick, and now we have to select the defender that he's going to be covering in man coverage. So if I wanted him to go out and cover the tight end in Vernon Davis, I would select X on PlayStation. That would be A on Xbox. If I wanted him to cover Devin Hester, which is R1, I would hit R1. That would be right bumper on Xbox. So you can change that to whatever you want. And now you can see with this alignment, and this is really dumb defense, but we're just using it for an example here. We have now 2 QB spies and then Nolan Smith covering Vernon Davis. So we've manipulated every defensive lineman here without ever having to touch that player with our circle button, or selecting that player with our analog stick. So let's move up to the next group of defenders, which are going to be our linebackers, and it's going to be the opposite of our defensive line. Instead of pressing left on our D-pad 2 times, we're going to press right on the directional pad 2 different times. And I do just want you to notice the first time I press it here, it's going to bring up the linebacker assignment option, and I do want to go back. If I just press left on the directional pad 1 time instead of 2 times, we're going to have defensive line assignments and options. So again, pressing it that second time, down in the bottom left, you can see it said to quick adjust. A lot of you probably know these things right now, but you know, if we wanted to spread our defensive line, we could press up on our left analog stick. If we wanted to slant that defensive line to the left, we can push left on our left analog stick. Some formations are going to behave a little bit differently than others. When it comes to the D-line specifically, like if you think your opponent's running outside a lot, they're doing a lot of stretch outside runs, you can press up on your right analog sticks to slant outside. You're not going to see any like movement, but that's what they're going to attack. When it comes to the run defense, you can slant left, slant right, slant inside if you think that, you know, your opponent's going to be running up the middle. These are things that you can do. So sorry to kind of go back to the D-line, but I did forget to point those things out. Now we're going to reset our play here, and again, now we're going to control our linebackers. So if we push right on the directional pad 1 time, we can now blitz all of our linebackers by pushing down on the right analog stick. So now we have Kyle Hamilton and Brian Urlacher blitzing instead of just Brian Urlacher, and that's how the play was originally designed, with just 1 blitzer. By default, you see when we reset the play here, Brian Urlacher is blitzing. If we want to put all of our linebackers in a zone, we would push right on the directional pad and then push up on the right analog stick, and now we have both of these guys in a zone. So it's a quicker way to adjust 2 or multiple players at once. Also, I'll go back to using a safety right. We can go ahead and press right on our directional pad 1 time, and if I want to blitz just one of my linebackers, I can press left on our right analog stick, and you can now see here that Kyle Hamilton is blitzing. And if I did that again, obviously we can just do blitz all linebackers to make this process faster. But if I wanted to blitz the right outside linebacker as well, or instead I could press right on that right analog stick. Now they're both blitzing here, but you know, you can do those 2 individually. And again, you can shift, spread, pinch, you know, your linebackers left, right, and then either down or up with that left analog stick and all of the options. Exactly what we did with the defensive line, just a different positional group. Let's get back to quick adjusting our individual linebacker. So instead of pressing right on the D-pad one time, we're going to do it twice. That's going to bring up the icons for our linebackers. If you're in a formation that has 3 linebackers or even 4 on the field, they'll have more options to choose from. But in this scenario, we have X is going to be Kyle Hamilton. That would be A on Xbox. And then square, which would be X on Xbox, is going to be Brian Urlacher. So if we wanted to adjust Brian Urlacher, we're going to select his icon. And now we have multiple options here, so we can put them in different zone coverages with our left analog stick, a couple different options for zone coverages with our right analog stick, or we can blitz or go man coverage here. So again, if I wanted to put, we'll just go Brian Urlacher in man coverage. We're going to press up on our right analog stick, and then we're going to select the defender that we want him to cover. If we want him to cover John Ross over there on the left-hand side, we'd hit square on PlayStation. If we want him to cover the running back and Jahmyr Gibbs, we're going to hit triangle. That's what we'll do for this example. And now you can see we have this Jahmyr Gibbs double team. Now, we don't really want to double team the running back. We can then hit 2 times right on our directional pad to bring up that menu again. And this time we're going to select Kyle Hamilton with X or A on Xbox. And again, we can put him into man coverage on a different assignment. We can blitz him if I want. So now it looks like this. I changed my mind. I don't want to blitz him anymore. Double tap right on the D-pad, select X for the defender you want to change. And now I want to put him in a QB spy, right? So we're going to push left on our right analog stick, and now this is how the defense looks. He's in a QB spy. You can manipulate any one of the 11 players on defense with a couple different button presses. We'll cover more specifically like what each of these zones do and when you're going to use them in various formations with my Vikings, defensive ebook / guide. For now, we're just showing you how to quick adjust. We'll explain why we're doing certain quick adjustments when we get down to the actual individual plays. But again, if we wanted to put, our Kyle Hamilton in a middle third, we can push up on our left analog stick. I'm going to refer to that as a blue zone. And you can see now he's going to drop back and basically try to cover the middle of the field, deep down the field. So we can adjust all of those types of zones if we want. We can put them in a curl flat, which is going to protect the sidelines, and we'll talk about like the depths on which they protect these or run these zones when we get to coach adjustments as well. But we can manipulate basically any zone that we want to. Here's a hook curl, which is going to cover more so the middle of the field, but not deep down the field, depending on your coach adjustments there. But we can change him to pretty much anything that we want just by doing quick adjustments here, all from a linebacker level. At this point, we showed you the defensive line level as well, and now it's time to get to the secondary. So just simply hitting triangle on PlayStation or Y on Xbox is going to bring up your coverage adjustments menu. When people talk about shading coverage, that means that they're kind of guessing which direction your opponent's going to be throwing the ball. So if we want to shade over top, we're trying to protect from getting beat deep down the field. If we're shading underneath, and this is all going to be done with the right analog stick, we're trying to stop like drag routes, underneath routes. If we're worried about corner routes, we're shading outside. If we're worried about post routes or slants, we're shading inside. It's not always going to work 100% of the time, but these are various ways that you can go ahead and kind of adjust your defensive coverage to the tendencies in which you think your opponent is running on offense. And you're not really going to see a ton of movement when you do these things, but just kind of watch my secondary. If I push right on my if I push left on my right analog stick, we're going to be shading our coverage inside. You may see some of the cornerbacks move just slightly. Let's go ahead and do it so it doesn't look like they did anything here. It really depends on the formation and the coverages. We'll hit triangle on PlayStation, Y on Xbox again, and this time we want to shade, outside. Again, you're not going to see too many differences here. We'll do it again. You're not seeing the changes, but I'm doing it, right? And sometimes if I think I'm, worried about like not only a corner route, we're going to shade outside, but also maybe a streak corner route combination, I will then also shade over top. So a lot of times I'm outside and over top. That's basically up and out here, but it's 2 different buttons or 4 different buttons you have to press. Triangle to start it up here, up on the right analog stick for over top, triangle to start it again, and then right on the right analog stick to go inside, or excuse me, outside. I'm sorry there, but it would be pushing your right analog stick to the left to shade inside, as these buttons show you. So some other things that we're going to point out here on the coverage adjustment screen: you can give cushion or press. A lot of you probably know that, like pressing up on your left analog stick is going to back off a lot of your defenders. Pushing down on the left analog stick is going to put them into press, but you are open to getting beat off of that press there and getting beat down the field for some really big plays. So you kind of got to be careful doing that. You can also go with the combination of pressing and shading over top, right? It's not always going to be perfect, but that is something that you can do. So you're pressing, but your back end safeties know that they got to be aware of getting beat deep there, and that's what shading over top can do. I don't really use the show blitz or the sticks option too often, so I'm not really going to cover that in this video, but those are additional options you have for the coverage adjustments. Let's get back to quick adjusting here. So we hit triangle once, we're going to hit it again, and again that would be Y 2 different times on Xbox when you're on defense. And just like we had with the defensive line and the linebackers, we now have buttons for every single member of our secondary. That's going to be all 4 cornerbacks and our 2 different safeties, and selecting each individual player is going to allow us to change the type of coverage you're in, whether it's man coverage, zone coverage, blitzing, QB spy. You can pretty much do it all from these buttons. Now, there are going to be some zones that behave a little bit differently or look a little bit differently on quick adjustments based on the formation, but like I said, this is episode 0 to our Vikings defensive book, so everything that we do for episodes 1 through whatever we get to should look the same on your screen if you're running the same plays and the same formations that we're going to talk about in the future. If you're using these quick adjustments with your defense, some things could look a little bit different, but that's going to be based on your formations and alignments and all of that. But get back to quick adjusting here. So if we're selected on Justin Simmons, and even with this menu, we can still move around here. If we wanted to change our free safety, and in this case it's going to be Brian Thomas Jr., we're going to hit triangle on PlayStation, Y on Xbox, and again we are now given a bunch of different options in which we can change the coverage adjustments if we want. So we can put them in a deep half, we can put them in a curl flat, a hook curl, an inside third, all types of different options out here. So like one thing, for example, that I like to do with my safety sometimes is kind of roll my coverage. So if you look by default, Simmons and both Brian Thomas Jr. are in deep zones. And let me get on a linebacker just to show you. So maybe because my opponent's in bunch here, or I'm in bunch for this example, I'm a little bit worried about a corner route, so I want to kind of cheat to the outside. And of course we can always shade up and shade outside as we just showed you. But one of my favorite things to take away corner routes is putting my safety on the side of the corner route that I think is coming here in a what we just call a purple, right? A purple zone. So we're going to hit triangle or Y on our Xbox controller 2 different times. We're going to select R1 to go ahead and select Isaiah Simmons, which is our free safety, and we're going to push push right on our left analog stick to put him into a curl flat, which again I refer to as a purple zone. Now your depths are going to be needed to adjusted appropriately, and we'll talk about that in episodes 1 in the future, but that's going to kind of protect the corner route. Now by doing that, it leaves the middle of the field wide open, because this guy is going to play over here. When I say this guy, I mean Brian Thomas Jr. He's going to be playing over here. Now, of course, I could always quick adjust my linebacker like we showed you earlier and put him in a middle third. That is one way to go ahead and protect against that, but maybe I need to have Urlacher blitzing or just doing something else. So again, we're just showing you how you can manipulate every single player individually. We're going to go ahead and double tap our triangle or Y button there, and in this situation, we're going to select Brian Thomas Jr. with triangle, and we're going to press left on our left analog stick to put him on an inside third. And again, this is a way I like to kind of roll coverage. So he's going to come back and cover the middle of the field. This guy is going to run over to the right. Obviously, the left side of the field is going to be open to getting beat, and we do have a guy in man coverage here, but I'm just showing you the ways that you can individually manipulate each defender. If we wanted to do it to a cornerback, we can go ahead and select Patrick Peterson here, and if we want to put him in a hard flat, we push left on our left analog stick. If we want to put him in a cloud flat, we push down on our left analog stick. If he's in a zone and we want to put him into man coverage, again, bringing up our menu, selecting the defender. In this situation, we push up on our right analog stick. and then we would select the defender that we want him to cover. So naturally it should be square or John Ross, which is going to be X on Xbox. If I'm just getting crazy here, right, and I want to have him cover Jahmyr Gibbs for whatever reason, we can hit triangle or Y on Xbox. And you can see he's now not covering John Ross, but he is covering Jahmyr Gibbs. If we wanted to put Brian Urlacher on John Ross, we can go back to pressing right on our directional pad 2 different times, hitting square to select Brian Urlacher, pressing up on our right analog stick for man coverage, and then selecting the receiver that we want him to cover. In this case, it would be John Ross for square. And now we got this really weird formation going. Again, you know, we're on Kyle Hamilton here, so we can do whatever we want. If we want to put Brian Thomas Jr. in a different type of zone, we can do pretty much everything we want. We're going to put him in a hook curl. We'll press down on our left analog stick. He's now in a hook curl. We want to put him in a curl flat, which is another purple zone, but to the left instead of the right here. We push right on our left analog stick. Like I said, you can do whatever you want with any of these players. If I want to do a cornerback blitz, double tap triangle to bring up our menu where we're going to select our player. We want to go ahead and blitz Jalen Ramsey, who is that slot defender there. We're going to hit L1 on PlayStation, that we left bumper on Xbox, and then we're going to push down on our right analog stick to put him into a blitz. For whatever reason, that didn't work. Maybe we just have too many adjustments going on, so let me reset the play here and try it again. I'll be honest, I have no idea why it's not allowing me to do it. It did let me blitz, right, my square defender over on the left-hand side. I have no idea why it's all of a sudden just not letting me blitz these guys, but I've done this plenty of times before, so it may just be a weird practice mode bug with 2 different controllers. But if you want to blitz a defender, and that's going to include safeties as well, you're just going to do down on your right analog stick. You can see now it allowed me to blitz my safety along with the cornerback there. Now we have 3 different guys blitzing. Again, this is not ideal defense, but I'm just showing you the different ways that you can change different coverage adjustments, whether it's blitz, zone coverage, man coverage, all from quick adjustments without ever having to leave your user. Also, if you push in on your right analog stick, it kind of shows you the starting step for all of that. So you can see left on the D-pad is D-line, right on the D-pad is linebackers, triangle is going to be your secondary. If you want to change one singular player, you're just going to hit X or PlayStation on Xbox, or I'm sorry, X on PlayStation, A on Xbox, but you have to be selected on that individual player. And then just one other thing I want to show you here. I don't use it that much this year, but I used it a lot last year, right? So if we're in this defense and I want to go ahead and press everybody, right? We showed you how to do that. Triangle on PlayStation, Y on Xbox, down on the left analog stick. So now we're in a press, right? But I kind of don't want to leave the left of screen receiver, who could end up being, you know, basically in one-on-one coverage here. I don't want to press just that guy. I want everybody else to press, just not him. We're going to hit triangle on PlayStation, Y on Xbox. We're then going to select X on PlayStation, A on Xbox for individual, and we're going to select the receiver that we want to have that individual coverage on. So in this case, it's going to be John Ross, so we're going to hit square. That's X on Xbox. And if we want to back off just the defender covering John Ross or whatever, you know, receiver you select, we can then go ahead and press up on our right analog stick. And as you can see, he's going to back off. So everybody else is pressed except for him. And the same thing's going to apply for shading coverage, right? Like I only think this guy is going to run a corner route to the left. If we want to shade outside for that, we're going to hit triangle once or Y once, X or A on Xbox one time for that individual section. The player that we want to, you know, change coverage on specifically. So again, we're going to select John Ross over there on the left of screen. And if we want to shade to the left or shade outside, we're going to push left on our right analog stick. You're not going to see any movement. There's nothing you can actually see on the screen to 100% confirm that you did that, but we just shaded to the left or the outside on this individual assignment. And you can do the reverse if you're in a situation where everybody's backed off in coverage, but there's one guy that you do absolutely want to press. You know, triangle, individual for X there, John Ross, sorry, for him specifically, and then down on the right analog stick. Again, we're going to get into a press formation. He doesn't get as close to the receiver there, but you can see everybody else is backed off. We were able to manipulate that one defender to go up and press that one offensive player. So that's, I think, everything for quick adjustments there. There may have been some small things that I missed. For the most part, I don't think so, but if I did, we'll be covering those, you know, like into individual situations when we cover the exact plays that we're going to be running. So that's episode 0. Episode 1 is going to focus or start to focus on the defensive playbook for the Minnesota Vikings. Again, we're going to be in mid blitz a lot to cover trips. We're going to be in dime 1-4, show you some zone blitzes, some man coverage blitzes, and how I attack specific kind of meta formations that you're going to see day in and day out. So hopefully you guys learned how to quick adjust after this episode, and you're going to use all the tools from this episode to carry into the specific game plan from the Vikings defensive playbook. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Popular Stranger. I'm out. Peace.